Do you know how powerful you are?
Welcome to Rise Urban Nation.
Welcome everybody to Rise Urban Nation.
Reshaping and elevating your mindset to help you achieve what you believe.
Sometimes we don't even see our own greatness. You can't be what you can't see.
And connecting Black cultures to build a community of talent and success.
Black people need to realize that they are assets. You are an asset.
When we rise, you rise.
Come together as a group.
This is Rise Urban Nation with Terrell Simmons.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at, tuned in. Welcome to another episode of Rise Urban Nation. I told you we're going to try to get these episodes with me and Sola, just giving you consulting tips and advice. But we wanted to take a pause this week and talk about Black innovation for a second. Well, actually, hold on. Let me rephrase that back for Sola comes at me. Pan-African innovation. So
there you go.
Well, look, hold on. So just so the listeners have a little feedback on why I just did that, because me and Shola, we often have these little debates back and forth, and we come to the conclusion that Black is not. Let me just stop here. Shola, why is it that you have an issue when we label everyone this broad stroke of Black, especially? I know it's something that we do a lot in the U.S.
Right.
Tell the people why you have a problem with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, because obviously before I came here, it wasn't terminology that was used to describe me. I was always described as either British or British Nigerian or something. And, even in England, it would be Black British or Nigerian British or something like that. And here, it just seems to be a term to just denote anyone that's just darkest skin of some kind. Either you're brown or you're Black. And that's not a terminology that we created for ourselves. That's something that we were given. If you want to describe me, if you want to, really look at even people in general, it should be about ethnicity, right? Like for me, for instance, not only am I Nigerian, I was born in the UK, but I'm African as well. Now, if we really go down into the crust of it, right, I'm Yoruba. That's the tribe I'm from. Mm-hmm. So, if somebody really wanted to describe you or anything, say, oh, is that Yoruba girl? Or is that Nigerian girl? Or is that, African? I really accept that because, Africa is a mix of different countries than what people understand it to be. So, that British girl or something like that. That to me would be better than just, putting a label that does not even represent even the pigment of my skin. So I think that's, one of the key things. And we've been given this label that erases who we are, erases our actual individual identities. And that's something that I think, it's hard because even as a community, we don't always work together. So why put us in one box as if like we're all the same? We're not all the same. Yeah. What I think is not what even my daughter thinks. What I think is not even what my mother thinks. We're completely different individuals, and that's how we should be known as. So if you really want to put a label on it, put a label based on our, origins, our ethnicity, and that would be, Africa.
Yeah, you know what? And I see that in other cultures of society, immigrants, refugees who either were brought here or, somehow disconnected from the origin roots. They always find a way to identify with the origin root. I'm uniquely different because, as most people know my story, like I was raised, my stepfather's Nigerian, so I was raised believing in all the traditions of Nigerian culture. So it wasn't until I got outside of my household where I'm identified as Black or African American, right? And so, I have that identity as well, but my root identity was to the Nigerian side that I was raised in my household. And here's my take on it. Like, when we look at what Black culture became in America, Black culture is all of our brothers and sisters in the diaspora who got here, however they got here, who had no connection to the root of which they came from, which now, if you really wanted to, you could take all these different tests like 23andMe to find your origin root because, America has done a good job of wherever those records are, sealing them, burning them, not keeping them, so people can't trace them, but which continent of Africa they was taken from or the Caribbean they were taken from. So the Black culture became how people of color, Black people, defined and became grounded in some type of identity that was stolen from them or they couldn't connect to,
Mm.
And so that's what it kind of became. With that being said, we're going to explore, me and Shola are going to just explore like just Pan-African innovators. I know we met a whole bunch of them when like, through Risepreneurs, and we highlight them here. So many of them have really elevated, like we're looking at this article right now, about Black innovators who elevated United States, and then reassessing the golden age innovation. And when you look at that, what are your feelings? What are your thoughts around that as we start to, approach this topic?
Yeah, it looks like, the contributions that, Pan-Africans have made, to industrial revolution, inventions that have contributed to how technology has advanced today has been muted. And this is something that needs to change. So, just let's figure out what the mute button is and press it. We make contributions to agriculture, transportation, communications, manufacturing, electricity. We make communications to academia, and it's just unheard of. And it's a situation where when someone like myself, as educated as I am, and most have to dig through layers of history just to find out, what we've actually done and how something started. That is systematically, and that is something that has been purposefully done. Because if you don't see yourself, why is it now we're fighting for representation? You need to see yourself in some place to be able to say, oh, I can do that. For instance, the recent one, Black Panther, our first Black superhero, right? Or Pan-African superhero. And and what I loved, it was African. So it's a situation where it's like, but it made such a massive impact, to generations, not just mine, but, I know for a fact, like, for instance, my mother enjoyed that movie. Yeah. To see what could have happened if we were not interrupted by colonization, right? To see what could have happened if certain advanced communities shared the technology they had. For instance, we had Egypt, right? And what they had even achieved, even to today, some can't even achieve that. Mm-hmm. And in that time where we didn't even have all the, cranes and all the things you have that make construction easier today, right? Yeah. That had to be some high level of mathematical and engineering understanding to be able to achieve things that are still standing till today. So it's little things like that we want to raise and amplify. Like, what have we contributed to? But that's okay in the past. But what are we going to do now to ensure that people are aware of what we're doing? Mm-hmm. And this is why, again, I really embrace tech, because when we make a difference in the tech space, it is heard. Even now, the company that I'm in, that I'm CEO of High Gear Technologies, right? We have 2 patents pending that we're working on. Understanding that process of making sure you keep your patent, you work on it yourself, you get, to a commercial point, your product to get it commercialized so that you can license it out to bigger companies that could potentially use it to create other technologies or improving technologies. That has been a journey in itself, which shouldn't be that hard. If there are groups of people who are successfully bringing their inventions to life, why should it be difficult for a group of people to do that? A group of people who have contributed in the past. Yeah. You can only imagine, and this is the key thing about diversity. Diversity makes us better because everyone brings something to the table. It's like you're trying to move the world forward and you're leaving a particular group behind. It's not going to work. It's the same thing even with the wealth gap. You're trying to move forward when majority of the world or your community or your country or your nation is left behind. It's the same thing. And diversity, DEI, basically diversity, equity, and inclusion, covers not just race or ethnicities. It covers even gender. If you're trying to move forward as a nation and half are left behind or treated as subpar, you are not going to move forward in the way that you should. Because what I see is very different from what somebody else would see. And that is even in a situation where we're all similar. We all bring something to the table. And that's what, I'm hoping, like with this innovation space, that the access to information we have now, this is the information age, right? This is a time when so much that has been buried is coming up and is coming into forefront to remind us of this is what we can do. This is what we achieved. Even if someone is not telling you and validating you, right? There are ways at which you can get things done. It doesn't have to be. And now we have the global economy is our stage. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a place that isn't allowing you to move forward, guess what? Get up, get on Zoom, meet someone else in another country that will help you. And that's like something about innovation. Innovation has no borders. It has no borders, really. If you really want to get it to a point where you're going to succeed, you have to realize that, you know what? Sit with a group of people who are getting it done. Find someone in your space that has done it, because that was very important for us. For us, we were lucky in the beginning of our journey that our first mentor/advisor was someone who had achieved financially what we're trying to achieve with our company. And who had worked in a company that was innovative, aggressively innovative first before she started her own company, and then she exited. So it just made sense for her to imbibe that into us, and then we imbibe that into our culture. And then we heavily believe in collaboration, because that was the thing. If I invent something and then someone comes and buys it before my name is even out there, guess what? No one will know who I am. And guess what? I would not benefit the way I should from that invention if I had seen it through to a certain point. That's what has been happening. And that's what we essentially need to focus on, creating our own pathways from idea to finished product. And that's something that, we really need to work on in the Pan-African community.
Yeah. And I think, to highlight a couple of key points that you mentioned there is that we definitely need to work together. And I think we need to work together to create systems that really work for us. Because, these current systems that we try to work in, they're not always designed to benefit us as Pan-Africans. And, that's something that we've done with our platform, Run, by amplifying Pan-African innovators. And we've met some amazing, I remember you meeting Jasmine and then introducing her to me. And then we got to see what she's doing with her business and then also see how we can really help amplify her business. And like, hey, you should be doing this. And out of all the people that she's had in her life, like, it was surprising to me that nobody was able to, pinpoint these things for her that help amplify her. And even us, as we continue to grow. And with your experience, knowledge, and so forth, what would you say is, the biggest things that hold Pan-Africans back from, being elevated in entrepreneurship and making sure their companies, their stories are being amplified all over the world?
It's a mindset. That's the first thing I would say. I've had the opportunity to work with people who are extremely brilliant, but they just have no idea that they are, because they are in an environment that's toxic to them where they work, where they're being told or not being promoted as they should. So they, in their mind, even though they have the skill set and the experience that is way more than most of the people that have surpassed them in their organizations, they are just left behind on purpose. So that damages you. So aside from dealing with racism, and institutional racism in different ways, you also have to deal with, your, like, this whole mentality of flogging your best horse, right? And making that person think that they're so small and letting them not realize how big they are. It's like some kind of form of abuse, this fear of, oh, I don't want to lose that person, so let me put the fear of God in them so that they don't leave. Or so, it doesn't make any sense. They eventually, when that person wakes up, even if it kills them, they will leave. And that is what is happening now. This great big resignation has been an opportunity for a lot of people of color to decide on how they're going to channel their skills for the life that they want. Because COVID really brought into the forefront that you could be gone tomorrow. And what have you done with your life? What have you done for yourself, for your community, for your family? And that is something that when you sit down and think about it, that clicking those buttons is not going to lead there. It has to be something else. It has to be something else that's going to generate that. And that's where we are at now. It's time for Black and Pan-African innovators to really, all those ideas you've been locking up, it's time to make them a reality. It really is. When we started High Gear, it was before COVID. Little did we know that what we were working on could potentially help and change how hygiene is looked at, globally. And we were only trying to help a particular problem on one continent. But now we realize that, actually, it's a global problem. And that's the seat that every single Pan-African founder is on right now. They are trying to develop something that is going to really not just disrupt, but improve how things are being done. Because guess what? When you've been ostracized and left at the bottom of the barrel for so long, you end up seeing things and it's something that we were just talking about just now, weren't we, Terrell, about when an organization gets so big, Those at the top have no clue about how things are run or the people who are basically underneath them. And it could even be as far as 3 steps removed that they are completely disconnected. That's scary, so that means if you've managed to even go from the bottom of the barrel to the top of it, right, you shouldn't have that fear that it could disappear one day. And I think that's another thing that stops Pan-African entrepreneurs. It's mostly in the West, this fear that what happened in Tulsa could happen any day, so why should I even bother? Do you see what I'm saying? But that's not the world has changed. For that, something like that to happen, the world would not be silent. See what happened with George Floyd. The world was not silent. See what happened with Me Too, the Me Too movement. The world was not silent. And it's a situation where even in parts of the world that it's even scary to speak out, people have the courage to do so. So that's what I think we need. We need, first of all, our mindset. We're no longer in those times. Then it's the courage. It takes a lot to believe in yourself, to motivate yourself, to be passionate about something enough to do something about it. And that's what I love about Run. We're not just about talking about stuff. We're about doing something about these generational issues that are just being recycled from generation to generation. It's time to stop recycling the darkness that has been and really focus on the light that we are, and really focus on the good that we can bring into this world. Right now, it's not the same people running it that are going to fix the problem, because if they could have, they would have. It has to be the ones that did not get the opportunity to now finally say, you know what, this is how I think it will work, because they've done so much with nothing. They've done a lot, we people of color have done a lot with literally nothing, and everything taken away. So it's like, if we're able to make it, and that's something, again, that you have to also be wary about. When you're making it and someone realizes that, but how? How are you able to do it when we've put every blockade on your way? Do you see what I'm saying? Instead of looking at that as actually something that's really good, is looked at in a way as a threat. No. There's so much in this world for every single human being on this earth. Every single human being. There's enough. Go ahead, sorry.
Funny, I was literally saying that the other day to some leaders that such a scarcity mindset. Like we should be in the mindset of abundance. There's literally enough for everybody. So I appreciate you saying that. And I hate to take it back to the scarcity mindset, but what do you say to people who are like, they see what happened in the Rittenhouse case, and they say, see, no matter how successful I get, the system can still take my business from me. It can still starve me out. And although people won't be silent, that the system can inherently still trip me up.
Sometimes I think that fear as well is like a crutch. For us, being a self-funded tech firm has been very intentional, right? You have a situation where in the VC space, people are getting checks of up in the tens of millions, hundreds of millions. And then, you get a situation where Pan-Africans are getting, 6-figure checks. That is essentially going to starve the company. They're going to get to a point where they will not meet milestones. They would need more money. And at that point is where you can take it from them. You can kick them off the someone who started something from scratch. You can kick them off as CEO and put somebody else there. It's happened. It happens. And it's not a fear factor. It shouldn't be a fear factor at all. It should be what drives you to keep it lean, to be very focused, laser focused on what you're doing, so that it's an actual need. And it's something that is like, they're going to need it like air, basically, eventually. That's the space that Pan-Africans need to operate in, because when you have everything, you don't need to create anything. See, that's the mindset here. But when you're starved consistently, guess what? You become a genius. That's where innovation comes from. Innovation is based on lack of. It's not based on when you have it all. You don't have. I mean, when you have it all and you have access to resources and everything, you don't need to care about an invention or developing something new. Most people who invent things is because it was a pain point, something that they felt they needed that they wish existed in the world. They wish they had. So when you have a situation where a continent has been blocked from having an industrial revolution of its own, and then we are in an age where technology allows that to completely, has broken all those chains. Now we need to start breeding and encouraging a new set of innovators that are not looking to the West consistently always for funding.
Yeah.
Because there is cash in the Pan-African space alone. Why are we not focusing on investing in ourselves? Why are we thinking of even building funds with people who have oppressed us consistently, or people who don't understand our pain points, our problems? I mean, I remember before, High Gear, we were focused on companies that were developed by immigrants, right? So they're coming here with their own the things that they know they needed on where they're coming from, but they see that does not exist here and they're trying to make it, but people don't get it because they're targeting it to their own community, right? So imagine trying to explain to someone a culture that they don't understand. You see, that's the thing. With all this time that we've interacted with each other, why don't we know about each other's culture properly? Why do we have to, unless you intentionally decide to study it in when you're still in school, you wouldn't know, right? Meanwhile, the education I had access to all religions. I had access to learn about everyone's culture, right? Not just about respecting them, but so that I knew how to conduct myself when I was around certain people and not be shocked or irritated by something about their culture that it didn't sit well with me. That's not my place to do that, because I know who I am and I know where I come from. If someone does something different in their culturally, that has nothing to do with me. That's how they've survived, right? So, and thrived, So it's something where all I can do is say, well, this is what we do in my culture. And in my culture, this is how where we progress, and this is where we're failing. How does it work in yours? Because you cannot find solutions for something it's like when you're sitting in, sorry to use this analogy, but when you're sitting in shit, it stops smelling.
Yeah.
Do you see and that's what happens also to generations of immigrants that come here. By the second generation, they've lost a lot. Yeah. They're battling themselves. By third, a lot has gone. They become completely, American or Western washed or something. Yeah. And they're forgetting who they are. Yeah. And it's usually when you're in your 30s or 40s that you're like, you start digging and looking for, oh my goodness, I was one of them. I mean, I used to hesitate to tell people I was Nigerian because of, what I knew the West thought about us. Yeah. But when it got to a point where the voices that were in my head were not mine anymore, I had to switch. I had to be like, no, my name is Adesola Akindele. I am Yewa. I am Yoruba. I'm Nigerian. Yeah. I'm African. And if I'm even going to say anything about my external roots, I am British. So I had to remind myself in layers, like an onion, of who I was. See, that this is what I'm hoping as an organization as run, we can show our brothers and sisters in diaspora how to discover that. A big part of what we're doing is to help basically encourage you to find your genetics, to really discover who you are, what makes up your blood, right? We already know what the Western side is. So what about that other side of you? What about that other part of you that could mean so much and keep you grounded that you haven't discovered at all? Yeah. It's really, it's difficult because with all my interactions with Western culture, self-reflection seems to be a massive, a fearful point for most. People don't want to really accept and see who they are for who they are. They're afraid.
So true.
And that's something that it's not how how I was raised. I was raised to always think about what I do, how I affect others, and about being the best at whatever I decide to be. And if I wasn't the best, to look for who was the best and learn from them. Yeah. And, this is something that we need to reteach ourselves. We need to unlearn what is not ours and learn and remember, not learn, but remember who we are as a people. We are innovative people. We are great people. We are people who have had strong tribal, artistic, roots, right? Strong in not just as individual nations, but as people, as our identities. And even despite colonialism, it's still there. It still exists, right? It's still strong. Like, I can meet with my Igbo brothers and sisters. I can, meet with my Hausa brothers and sisters, and we can come together and work together. That's what I love about being Nigerian, because it's the only place I have been in the world that different tribes have found a way to easily work together to at least, survive I wouldn't say progress.
Right.
It's as in Nigeria we have lots of problems, but to
Right.
survive and
Right.
survive and thrive. So that's the key thing. Like I think that as Pan-African entrepreneurs, wherever you are, you need to let go of that fear. You need to change your mindset, and you need to have the courage to finish what you want to start.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those problems are based on leadership and structures in the system, right?
Oh yeah.
But I love that Shola just went on that tangent because she went into my field now. So just so you guys know, I'm the diversity, equity, and inclusion expert here, but she's trying to take my job right now. I don't know what's going on here. But this is like everything that you were alluding to is a lot of the stuff that I teach when we talk about equity, diversity, inclusion, the layers of us, and a lot of the problems you see for companies right now, even the companies that are doing good but could be thriving more, especially when you look at Silicon Valley when it comes to innovation. I feel a lot of reasons why sometimes innovation is stagnant, or if it's going forward, but it's missing, the elements that can make it thrive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is because they have not paid attention to the equity, diversity, inclusion piece. How often have we seen Silicon Valley having the problem of being very male cis heavy, and not being inclusive of women in the workspace, which doesn't allow for, and if we look at the studies show that anytime you have more diversity, it creates for better products, businesses, service, just because you get to look at those different layers and address them in the proper way in your product and service, how it's delivered to the masses. So it's more profitable. It's just better business all around. Now, this article the data going into the Brookings study around the Black innovators who elevated the United States. I was just thinking about your company that you started, High Gear, and shout out to all the ladies in High Gear. We would have to get all of you guys on the panel one day to do an interview just about High Gear and how it started.
Be happy to.
And one thing I really appreciate about the success of High Gear is that you guys got into the patent space with how you delivered you started your company, and I'm reading some data here, and data suggests that regionally there's institutional differences that I'm looking at the study explain quite a lot, and across the period it says Black people living in northern U.S. were 8 times more likely to patent than Black people living in southern states, and that the regional gap for white inventors is also large, showing that white people were 3 times more likely to patent than their southern counterparts, saying that white people are patenting at a much higher rate than Black people, and you had the wherewithal to patent, but I'm not sure if every Black person has that. Like, why do you think that is? Like, why are more white people patenting their inventions versus Black people? What is it?
Well, it's the conversations you have in your household. When someone invents something potentially, in a white household, most likely someone in that house is going to say, you better get a patent on that, right? So it's knowledge, right? Wealth will only take you so far as your knowledge. The more more knowledge you acquire, the more you will realize how to utilize that wealth. And that's the same thing in our space. These are conversations. Like right now, we're all talking about money moves, right? Okay, there are moves beyond money. It's about equity, okay? What does equity look like? That's ownership. What do you own? Is your life all about you renting, or are do you own something that is going to be giving you back? That's an asset that would be paying you back. A patent is an asset. And that's the mindset of most white households. They have been taught about gaining a key asset that is going to help them live a good life and then eventually their retirement. Even your retirement, your 401k, that's an asset too. That's going to pay you back in a later life. So it's thinking in that way, not about, when you're always in survival mode, you don't have time to plan and think about something like that. That's not going to be in the conversations in your household. I remember at a point when I was always survival mode with my daughter, and if she wanted to even come and have a conversation, it was difficult because I was just thinking about, okay, how are we going to eat next month? Right? If that's always on your mind, you don't have time to sit down and know all these things, to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to pick up a book and read about patents. or I'm going to figure out which organization can see. And if you already have a distrust of the system, you're not even going to look out for the organizations that are there to support you moving forward. So, for instance, an example with High Gear, we knew when we opened in the US, it was very important for us to have the support of business support organizations. I mean, that's something I've always known. So always look for your business support organization in your locality, right? And being an immigrant, I didn't have that mentality, oh, it's government, don't trust them, blah, blah, blah. I went straight in. That's the first, like, in fact, the first year I got here, that's the first thing I did. I went straight to SBDC and I did an entrepreneurship program because I wanted to understand how that works here, to see if I was going to be a 9-to-5 person in the US or I was going to be continue on my road as an entrepreneur. Well, we all know the answer to that. So, because my brother knows that I'm not the person to put. I would maybe not survive much in a 9-to-5 environment in this country because I don't have a poker face, so or a poker mouth. I will literally say what I think. So but yeah, so I needed to see, and understand and make sure that I work within the guidelines of this country when it comes to running a business. And here it's just a whole kettle of fish, completely different from what I'm used to in the UK or in Africa. So I needed to make sure that I got everything right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I realized that within 3 to 4 years, it was easy for me to be a consultant because people who were raised here, born here, didn't even know about the business support that existed. They were shocked. I'm like, don't you know about SBDC? I mean, every mentee I work with, I would literally say that over and over again.
Yeah. And
they're like, do you mean SBA? I said, no, SBDC, Small Business Development Center. And you're like, it was shocking. I now realize that, there's an opportunity here. Clearly entrepreneurship is not the first thing on certain people's minds. And to me, I believe for marginalized groups, that is your only option. As you're coming in as an immigrant, you automatically need to be thinking, what am I going to own? Yeah. Because you are, first of all, between your language, I don't want to say language barrier because most of us speak English, but your accent, how you sound, your culture, how you carry yourself, you're very different to most here. So what is it that you can use that could potentially invite people into your space? It's usually the culture. Yeah. Think about it. Even African American food culture has developed, it's what was brought over from Africa that you've now created your own cuisine. Same thing with when you look at our Asian brothers and sisters, same thing. What is it that they successfully own? Food, cultural activities such as things like martial arts, all that kind of stuff that people would automatically see that, okay, if I want to do this, this is what I think about. Then tech, so every culture has something to bring to the table. I mean, I remember watching something a couple of weeks ago that really shocked me that people did not believe that Africans made those bronze objects that we see in the museum. As detailed, as intricate with metal. And it is only now, after hundreds of years, that we have the next generation that are now creating those artworks with clay, with metal, with wood, when all that was stolen. All that art and the people who created them were killed off. It's in us. See, that is within. To naturally create, right? So when you lack resources, when you're only and you're thinking about survival all the time, you may think up of ideas, but survival is in your mind first. How do I eat? How do I have a roof on my head? But when you get to a point where you can give people a break, which is exactly what this pandemic did. We had 2 years literally of where people could now sit down and process and be like, you know what, I'm going to do this. Yes, there's a big resignation, but check the numbers for entrepreneurship. Exponentially grown in this period. Because people are finally realizing that I have something to offer this world that can make it better, and I'm going to do it. So with High Gear, I know some people we started before the pandemic. And when the pandemic came, we were like, oh man, we can actually do something here. And the only thing I can say that even if we look at it as a slow run for us, it's just because we decided to be self-funded. And we had to, because we had already seen between us founders, we had tried our to go into the VC space, and we already seen what was going on in there. And we were like, something, angel investment would be better if we're going to go down this way to invest in people. And this is not the way for us, because people don't focus anymore on the product anymore when they're trying to raise. They now focus on raising all the time and keeping the investors happy, which is one of the reasons why we have a massive wealth disparity in this world. Companies who are only focused on shareholders are not caring anymore about their customers or even their staff. It's just there's something about the way we operate in the capitalist sense that needs to change, because it's devoid of what it's doing and how it's destroying human life. So for us, I think this is where we're lucky, in the sense where, because we've been held back, we've seen all the mistakes. So it means that when we're going to take that first step, we literally can do so better informed. Do you see what I mean? And I think that's where we need to really embrace that right now, that we're better informed now. We and then we can make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes that have been made, in the past.
I love that. So when you look at the future and then how we, pretty much set the future for, Black innovation, Pan-African innovation and entrepreneurship, what do you think is the best route for us to take? What is the best route for us to take to increase it, engage, and make sure that we have plenty of us at the table eating? Okay,
so first, as an economist, you always look at what are the futures markets that are coming up, like what's coming up. So space is a major focus now. And then with COVID, hygiene, air quality, and green energy. So when you think about that and that space, and artificial intelligence, I almost forgot that one, because that's a big one that you and I always have conversations about. You have to start thinking more about the careers that need to come up in that space. Now, there are certain careers that would always be needed. So you're always going to need a lawyer, you're always going to need a doctor, engineers always, right? So, healthcare, look at the industries that are going to survive the ages. Because right now, COVID has shown what will happen to retail, what is going to happen to the hospitality industry, right? And there have been disruptors that have also even changed the hoteling industry, where Airbnbs come up, where you can actually, instead of staying in a hotel, you can get a home and live like you're at home, right? Home away from home kind of thing. Yeah. And there are going to be more of these disruptive ideas coming up. Don't hold back on yours. Yeah. Right? I've had ideas that came up 10 years ago that I'm not seeing in real life playing 10 years ago. And that just tells you that if that happens, that's me. That could be happening to every other person as well, like me. So don't wait, don't hesitate, and then so that you don't feel regret. Sometimes I don't believe in regret. So I'm like, if it's not for me, it wouldn't happen. If it's for me, it would happen. Every door we're open to make sure it does. And that's another thing about manifesting what you want and staying in a positive headspace, being realistic, but staying in a positive headspace. And making sure you're surrounded by people who are going to move you forward is very important. Staying around people who are collectively telling you that you're never going to make it and all that, it's not going to work. You need to cut those people off, whoever they are. And I mean it, like family, better other half or whatever. You need to just cut it off and then, literally face what you're doing, and you will meet your family. You will meet the family that's going to help you make it happen. That's what happened with us. And, it's about also being mindful all the time about what you're doing. Now, for us as an innovation, aside from looking at the industries that are going to be that are coming up, and EV as well as another one, is also the infrastructure behind, inventing something. That is another. It's funny because we went through all of this. We need more Pan-African owned fabrication companies you can go to with your idea, that have a skill set that can literally make it happen. I mean, now we have 3D printing and all these things. Being around people who are not going to be frowning their faces at what you're doing while you're doing it, is very important. I mean, we've actually gotten really good at it. Once we have a meeting or something, and then we can tell someone has a slight hesitation, and we listen to their feedback. Very important. Always listen to that. We take it in, and then we realize that, this is enough to know that we can't work with that person. Right. And we always have the voice of our advisor in our head. think about if Steve Jobs listened to everyone that said it wasn't possible. We wouldn't have the iPhone. We wouldn't have MacBooks. We wouldn't have iPads. Music wouldn't have changed. Streaming, all these things that has changed the way we consume content, we consume entertainment and stuff like that. So that's another thing, the fabrication side. Then you must get your patent. Start the process. Start that process. It's not cheap. I have to be, honest. It's not cheap.
And it's a process. It's a
process, yes. But there are organizations available to. In fact, USPTO is a very helpful organization. They have webinars, that you can watch, and they have like support for different groups of people, women inventors, things like that, so that you get that courage. I bet you on telly, some of you have seen Invent Help. I've never used them or anything, but they're options there out there for you to get this thing done. They're entrepreneurship centers you can go with. There are people who are big on technology, universities. Now, be mindful if you're working with certain organizations. Very early on in your patent, they're going to also have to be listed on the patent as contributing to it. So that's a general rule of thumb. If they've contributed to how your product has been made, they have to be on the patent. And that would mean they will also share in the profits of it, or they can decide to literally go ahead and make money off of it without really asking your permission. So you have to be mindful of all these things. So the invention space is about making sure that you have the strength and to continue on with that. It's not a short journey, it's long. Because when we started, we were like, oh, it's gonna be quick. No. You're looking at something that could potentially be 2, 3, 4 years. If you're in anything that needs like FDA or approval or something like that, it's gonna be longer. I remember when we worked with an advisor that was in the pharma space, and we were like, oh my goodness, blah blah blah. We were frustrated because it's been 2 years, and we haven't we were trying to make our prototype and all of that. And she said, I'm in the pharma space. It takes us 10 years before we even make a penny back off of our research.
Wow.
10
years?
Yeah, that's why there was skepticism about COVID vaccines, because what I said to myself, I said, you're thinking 10 years, but think about it. We have advanced in technology and in time. What would have taken 10 years, like an hour to do, we can do in a minute now. Think about it. I can send an email, but if I send it by post, it will take days. But I can send an email and you will get what I want to say immediately, right? You can plan a wedding online. You can go to a wedding online. Everything has changed. So you would obviously, and the most advanced space, in technology is in the medical space. I mean, people are trying to figure out how to live forever, for goodness sake. So, so it's like, I was really shocked at how people didn't see that it is possible to get to this place quicker. And you have no idea how pharma organize themselves. They could be sitting on a patent for 20 years until they realize it will be profitable now. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's all about knowledge, how you process things, how you think, and look at the world as a whole, not just your little tiny universe, but the world as a whole picture, and how many people have come together to make this happen. It's shocking that in the fight for even this pandemic, the people who are behind the getting us to where we even are now, where we're even able to go out and stuff like that, are not even being commended. They're not being spoken about. It has been a global effort. It wasn't just scientists in a lab in one country. It's a whole global effort that got us to where we are. Right. And that's the thing about that. This is why, Terrell, like DEI is so important. And the reason why I even mentioned it the way I did before, because initially I was skeptical about DEI because what I was seeing was, okay, this is another buzzword, right? What is it going to generate? So it was not until you gave me the education about it and how it works and, how your role is helping in situations, right? My only worry was that I didn't want a situation where we had a token Pan-African person in the company that is there to tick a box, but their ideas, right? It's not being realized. Yeah. I think that was a fear mindset that I had, which you, in getting educated, said that thing about fear. Fear is something because you only have that because you don't understand something. and you're not processing something. So what you need to do is make that effort. If you want to get rid of the fear, make that effort to find out about it, to understand it, and understand where the other person is coming from.
Yeah.
And that's what diversity is about. It's about seeing the strength in being, diverse, the unity. There's unity in diversity. There's strength in it, because then you have multiple people making an effort to get to a solution. For instance, with the climate change, right? And what we're going through, everybody needs to be on board. Every country needs to be on board, which is why when the COP26 happened, and then the two major countries that contribute to basically pollution on this planet were not even present. That was big, because it's like you can't have a conversation when it's like upriver, you're trying to keep the water clean, but downriver, but when upriver someone is crapping into it, you see what I'm saying? Everyone gets sick. And that's like the same thing with us in innovation. So there's enough out there, there's enough information out there to be able to pave a pathway for you to get from your idea to a finished product.
Yeah.
Then there's a lot that goes into it. Market research, right? All the elements of knowing how to start a business, understanding your minimum viable product, all go into it. In fact, another thing that people need to realize about a patent might not be something that will get into a store, but that utility, the utility of your patent, maybe the design, could be something that could be licensed to a bigger company for a solution that they're trying to solve. And that's where we fit in. So we believe in collaborative innovation. Initially, we were going to be competitors in our market, but our second patent meant that we would now be a supplier to the market. So we now had a different lens. We were like, okay, how do we help those already in the market to make this technology mainstream? And it's like that pivot was the best thing that we could do as a company. And now we're able to introduce innovative technology in that space that could potentially assist with mitigating the risk of pathogen spread, and not just COVID, but the flu that we deal with every single year. So it's little things like that matter, that where you need to not be restricted in how you think. In fact, think like a scientist. A scientist tries everything over and over and over again until they get the finished result. And and they don't stop there. They're always trying to improve themselves beyond that again. So that's where we need to come to as a people, where what we understand as A plus B equals C is no longer that. How do we get to Z, right? How do we go through all those letters of the alphabet to really get to the end, right? To really have the life that we want, not chasing tails all the time. How do we do that? And being innovators is key. Being innovative is key. It's only innovative companies that survive. Look what happened to Blockbusters. So it's as a people, we're no longer. It's no longer about being held behind, because tech has enabled that to not happen. But if we're not in the space in these spaces, if we're not writing the code, what happened with Facebook recently will happen again. If we're not in working with AI, if we're not working right now about how to get into space, that's an issue. Right? Or even do anything in space. So these are things like that we need to think about together cohesively as a group of people, but not just alone. See, this is why I believe heavily in how social equity works. It's about how not only do you right the wrongs, but you now include everyone. And that's hard, because it's the pain and suffering that has been endured. But something? I remember somebody asking me a question a long time ago. What does it mean to be? They first asked me, what does it mean to be Black? I said, could you rephrase that, please? So, okay, what does it mean to be African? I said, I usually have a response immediately. And I said, forgiveness. That's what it means to be African. I have to forgive someone I haven't even met because of what they think about me before they even meet me. I have to forgive that person when they're saying things that are not nice while they're saying it, so that I can even continue interacting with them. Every Pan-African has to do that. Every Pan-African has to do that.
Yeah.
Wherever we are, we have to forgive an air hostess that's rude to us. We have to forgive the immigration officer asking us questions that just don't make any sense. We have to forgive the shop owner that thinks we're coming in to steal. We have to forgive the security guard. We have to forgive policemen that automatically assume we're criminals before they even ask us a question. We have to forgive our bosses We have to forgive some of our friends who say things that are inappropriate. We have to do that every single minute of every single day.
Yeah.
Right?
It takes, not only forgiveness, but some grace too. Because,
yes, forgiveness and grace, because that's who we are. We're not vengeful people.
Yeah.
We never have been. Because imagine if we were.
Yeah.
So that's like something where knowing that about my people makes me very proud to be Pan-African. Makes me very proud because we've really endured. And even in that, we haven't become what has tried to destroy us, basically. That is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
To me. That is very amazing to me.
Well, and then when you even think about all that we endured, that we've overcome a lot as a group of people and individuals, and not to say that nobody else has, but there's a lot that we've gone through and that we continue to go through. A couple of things. There's so much great stuff to highlight as we as I go back to try to get the gems out of everything you said. To go back to the D&I as that tokenism comment, like, although I'm doing great work and there's companies that's doing great work, there's some companies out there that are just checking the boxes, and their day is going to come, and we're going to ask for receipts. So all those Black Lives Matter, and we're going to pledge this about, as I joke with you all the time, when you show me, like, I was saying, all right, how much money have they given, and to who? I want to see the receipts. Where are the receipts? Where are the receipts? And here's how when people are really committed to the work, organizations are really committed to work. I always tell people to take a look at their leadership at the highest of levels, right? And then look at that leadership and tell me, what do you see, right? And don't let color be the one thing that blinds you just because they have an executive here, and it's like, oh, okay, they're diverse. Like, I want you to look at their resume and see if there's diversity of thought. Did they pick the Black person who grew up in the suburbs, who came from Yale, who has the same thinking and mentality as the other exec over there, just because that's their people's, right? But where's the diversity of thought, like in the leadership of that team? And not just base it just on race. What are their values? What are they subscribing to? What are the initiatives that they're bringing forth in their company that really subscribe to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And then the importance that I want you guys to really go back to the nugget where she talks about the importance of patent and pivoting in a company. There's a young lady that I think she owned the patent, or she created that little spinny thing that was really popular with kids at one point, and she had let it go, and then all these manufacturers started creating it, and it became popular. Think about if she had held on to that patent, and she could have been the supplier or I don't know, somehow license it to folks. She would have been a millionaire 10 times over. And that's a way we can think about, innovation and support within the Black community. And I'm up here trying to find, what we found about Pan-Africanism that I think is just so great.
Oh yeah, that. Let me touch on one more thing that we need. So we thought about focusing on making sure you get your patent with the USPTO, and get it with USPTO first.
Yeah.
For me, my mind is like, the country that's most aggressive about IP should be the one that you have your IP in. So it's not that difficult to get your IP registered under United States Patent Office, okay? So Patent and Trademark Office. So please make sure that is something that you're focused on doing. There's so many things around patent. There's no such thing as a patent that's global. If you're going to protect yourself, it has to be in every country. But there are treaties that are available to protect you while you're getting and developing your idea. So be very mindful of that. But everyone is always trying to get into the biggest market in the world. So just start here first, and then take it out after that, and look for lawyers that know what they're doing. Okay, they're not going to mess you around, because that's very important. That will also protect your IP as well. Another thing, so starting with the patent office, then also fabrication companies that can actually help you get a prototype made. Or, now a lot of companies do have incubators in there. Be very mindful. Again, if they contribute to your patent, they're going to be part of it. So you need to make sure that you're very aware of these things and protect yourself. The last thing, which is, again, I'm so grateful. See, sometimes you never understand when you're going through something, but while we're in high gear, we went through. So a lot of people don't know the difference between a patent and assigning it to a company. It's very important that you understand the patent is tied to the inventors. When a company is involved, you have to assign it and hand over the rights of that patent to the company. A lot of people don't know this when they start a company with an invention in place, especially with tech IP, so an app or something like that. If you invented an app and everything, you could protect it, or the IP or whatever the process is, do that as your own, because you would be assigned to a company. You can assign it or license it to the company that you're developing. So for instance, let's say company ACE. So let's say John develops a ACE technology that he can literally license to several companies, but he decided to register a company at that point without doing the proper assignment. Guess what? If somebody invests in that company, they're going to want that patent. But you haven't done the right things to ensure that it's within the company, right? But the patent is still personally yours, which means if you work out of the company, ACE is not going to have that technology you are. So there's certain things you need to make sure are in place to ensure that is properly done. So make sure you speak to a lawyer that can explain this thing to you. There's assigning, which is handing over the rights, and there's licensing. We were at that point as well, where we had to decide where we as inventors were going to either assign or license the patent to our global headquarters, right? Company, yeah? So these are things that you need to be aware of. So it's very important you understand what you're doing. You can't do it alone. Please don't think you can do it on one of these online legal platforms. It's not going to work. You are going to need to speak to a lawyer consistently, which we do twice a month. Every time we want to make a decision around our patents, we speak to our lawyers first, right? And we have an NDA that protects us. Like, it's an ironclad NDA that I can tell you that it's ironclad, because anytime a manufacturer looks at it and signs it, they're usually frowning. So that you need something that really protects you in that way. The next thing is fabrication companies, right? Working with companies that would actually get your prototype made. This is so important. We don't have that in our community, and this needs to change, right? This is what is frustrating, We have loads of Pan-African engineers that don't even know how amazing they are, because of the traumatic experiences they've had at work. Pan-African engineers, we need you. We need you because we need your skill set. Pan-African scientists, right? We need you to help us bring our ideas to life. And this is a massive call out I'm doing, because, I know where we're going through looking for engineers that understand what we're trying to do for Pan-Africans or the African continent. Technology that we are sharing with the world, despite the fact that we originally started with trying to help a problem in Africa. So these are the things that, we need to figure out, people who already understand the technology beyond even my scope. I can say, when I was in college, I was thinking about this. We could try it. See, don't be afraid. Don't be limited by what you know. If scientists were limited, we would not be where we are today with COVID-19. So these are the things that, I need to encourage, like this particular group of people, the actual people who actually make everything we have. Engineers are so responsible for so much. We should be really clapping for them all the time. Then the last part, equity in your company. This is where we lose more than anything. There are more Black VC firms, Black angel investors coming up. It's not enough. What we need to look at is financial structuring. There are more things, there are different ways of putting money into your company that you would not lose equity. We need more of those, because the bank is not going to give us money. So you need to think about all these. If you're in finance, if you're a Pan-African in finance, you must have thought about this. You know what I'm saying. I don't want to throw out intellectual property out there, but there are different layers of ways at which a company can get funded, right? And there are different pathways. Educate the community on this, because they can't only be thinking the only way they can get money is by going venture capital route. It's not the only way. And you don't want a situation where you're talking to someone that wants to take 40% of your company, sometimes 60%. Yes, that happens. So, for something you're building that they would never take to the end the way you could. That's something that I like. We need more people talking loudly about this, loudly
Yeah.
about them.
I also
You
think,
know,
I think the reverse too. Like sometimes some people need to get the people involved with their company that can help them take it to the end. Like, maybe you were the visionary that started, but you may need
Mhm.
somebody to come off and has
yeah,
the baton off to finish off the race like a relay. And that's where Pan-Africanism is so important. But I'll touch on that definition a little bit later. Because you made me think about like all the ideas that I've had in my lifetime, but I'm not the right person to bring it to fruition. Or even with me and you, when we're just riffing, we have so many ideas between the two of us. We just don't have the time and energy to bring all those ideas to fruition. But if we were able to connect with the right people, and I think that's why Pan-Africanism, the movement, is so important. So go back to the definition that I was speaking of, that where we decided to settle on using Pan-African as our definition, in replace of just using Black as a definition. When we looked it up, I'm gonna read it verbatim. The Pan-African movement, an idea that people of African descent share a common history, culture, and experience. Therefore, should work together throughout the world because of their common culture. And this idea began in the 19th century with the efforts to end slavery and slave trade, and during the colonization of Africa. And now, this has been an idea of me and Shola's with Run for a long period of time, but we never had the definition of the words to and then we came across it. So like, this is what we've been trying to do. But in the space of entrepreneurship, innovation, technology, for our folks to bridge us together. And so I'm glad we were able to, finally, do this. Now, we could probably do this episode forever and ever, but I want to keep it into the drive time. So let's end it like this. What would you like to see next? Any other words of wisdom, and where can people find you?
Well, right now with Run, what we're trying to do is assist, larger organizations that are struggling, obviously, with DEI and corporate social responsibility strategies and initiatives that will help Pan-Africans. So that's something that, we really want to see. This episode focused on innovation. What we want to see is more based on the call to action I did earlier, more engineers, more scientists, more innovators, more coders, people in this space to come together to create some kind of marketplace where they're available, be it researchers as well, academic researchers are available for ideas. When we're only in survival mode, we only work within the limits and confines of what we know. But innovative mode is different. That's the space that I operate in all the time, which is it can be very good sometimes, but also like a curse. Seeing possibilities versus having the people to help you make it happen. That is what we need. That's where I would leave it at. Stop seeing things, stop receiving, and look for the people that would actually get it done for you. Be very mindful, because how we've done it before is not working. Sharing your idea, having it bought from under you before you even make it into something, and then the person makes billions out of it. No, that has to stop. Now, one thing about us as a people, we're not greedy. We're not selfish. So if we do actually eventually make something happen, guess what? We share with the world. That is who we are. That is who you are. That is what it means to be African. And, it's like, even now, all the resources we've got there, the world takes it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a situation where it's like, okay, well, what can we be in control of? What's in our minds?
Mm-hmm.
You can't control anybody else, but you can control yourself. Yeah. So whenever you're innovating, make sure you're in the right space to make it happen. See it through. Selling your patent off and all of that, no. See that invention through. So that, because the way patents work is this: the more time you spend on it, researching and developing it, the more it's worth. Mm-hmm. The earlier you sell it off, the cheaper it is. Mm-hmm. We got from a point where a patent wasn't worth anything until both together were worth millions. Yeah. So you have to think in that way. You have to think that the way this world is, can you really survive on selling your patent for 50 grand? Mm-hmm. How many ideas are you going to have in a lifetime? Or are you going to see through so that you build something that is worth millions of dollars that will benefit your community as well? And then you can let it go.
Yeah. So true.
So that's what I like to leave here with everyone.
Okay. So and if you are in the early stage, beginning stage, middle stage, feel free to reach out to run the web. Rise Urban Nation is the new website.
Yay!
It's up. We're fixing it as we go, but you can contact us through there. All information there. If you want to consult or coaching with Sola, definitely reach out. Any D&I with me or Sola. You want us on your podcast, definitely reach out. We're happy to connect, build partnerships. We're there. With that being said, we run this, and we'll see you at the next episode.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Rise Urban Nation.
Thank you for taking the journey.
Be sure to like, comment, and smash that subscribe button. And stay connected with Terrell on and off the show. Follow at Rise Urban Nation on all platforms.
Do what you love what you do. Don't chase the money. Let the money chase you.